In this video, we're going to be looking at top trends for 2020 related to website development. And this is really important if you're a marketing manager or within a marketing team, because we're going to be talking about 7 things that are likely to be talked about, those buzzwords and those topics that people are going to be talking about when it comes to website development. Particularly if you're looking to redevelop or improve your website, this is the video for you. So let's get started. The first trend we're going to be looking at is website accessibility. Website accessibility is ensuring that anybody who visits your website can navigate and understand the content within it, and that is particularly those with visual impairments or mobility issues. This is particularly important to UK companies or government-run websites because the UK government are ensuring that every government-run website is accessible by September 2020. Now, companies will want to jump on board with this because the technology used behind websites to ensure the website is accessible to everybody is also the same technology used by new emerging technologies such as voice readers. So your Google Assistant or your Alexa device in the near future will be able to read out the content of a website. You may be able to navigate through a website using the same technology. So to ensure that your website can be accessed by all, which is good practice in the first place, and also is taking advantage of future technologies, make sure that it is accessible. And we're going to be talking a lot about that in 2020. The next top trend is modularized systems. Now, if you've got a website, you've most likely got a content management system. And in there's varying degrees of flexibility as to how much of that content you can edit. On one end, you can customize and move anything, anywhere on a web page. This is quite time consuming. You've created something on one page and you want to put it onto another. You maybe have to save that element. That becomes a module and then it goes onto another website. But this can introduce a lot of bloated code. The other option is to modularize the way that content is managed within your website and create modules or sections that can be used within one page or another. And there's going to be a trend towards that modularized system. So things like drag and drop templating systems on WordPress are going to become less popular, particularly in the corporate world, and we're going to be using more modularized systems where you will create a template or an asset where you can change certain amounts of things maybe dynamically on other pages, and this makes it a lot easier for websites to be managed and adapt your content to suit different technologies as they emerge. So you're going to see modularization of the content and the way that you manage it within your content management system. Our third top trend is headless CMS. So a CMS stands for Content Management System, and that's typically the place that you log in to manage the content on your website. A headless CMS means that it's not taking care of the front end of the website or the way that it looks. It really is only taking care, or its primary function is to manage the content within the database and the files within a file structure. And this means that you can create something and manage all of that content that then via APIs communicates with your website or the front end of your website, or a mobile application, or a CRM, a customer relationship management, or a stock control system. But you have all of that flexibility, and your content management system is taking care of all of that information, making sure that it's stored correctly, safely, and distributed to the right places. And you're not having to tie in the front end of a website with that. So you can separate those two tasks. It makes it easier for when you're updating a website for new trends. We know that websites are always moving forward with different frameworks. So it's nice to have a content management system that you can use throughout those transitions to different technologies, so you can reskin the content. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of these headless content management systems in the future, and yeah, that's going to help us. And it also ties into the modularized system, ensuring that the right elements are taking care of the right elements of different parts of your website. Let's talk about native AMP websites. AMP stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages, and we've been developing these now for just over a year, seeing some really great results, particularly on Google, who are leading this project. AMP is a super fast framework, basically about speeding up the internet, instantaneous load times. And an AMP page can be served alternatively to your standard HTML page. It has a cut down version of the content without all of the bloat, which serves it up much quicker. But you can have a native AMP website. A native AMP website is solely an AMP website. It doesn't have an alternative. And there are many benefits to doing this, mainly that you only have one asset that you need to take care of and manage, so one website, rather than all these alternative pages. We've covered this topic a lot. You can go to our website, check out many articles on the advantages and disadvantages of using AMP, and many of the benefits we found from using it anyway. And also check out our YouTube channel where we covered many of the topics related to AMP. So AMP accelerated mobile pages, you're going to be seeing a lot more of it because the optimization benefits from it are amazing. So AMP native website. For this next trend, we're going to get a little bit more technical because we're going to be talking about certain coding languages that developers are using, in particular CSS. Now, you may have heard CSS before as your cascading style sheet. It's the code that makes the website look as it does, a layer on top of HTML to give it all of the color and the font styles, etc. Now, CSS is great and it's come on leaps and bounds in its latest revision, and most browsers now are up to date with this. And there are a lot of animation tools within CSS that make it really good for performance, which means you don't have to be using JavaScript. Now, you've probably seen JavaScript as replacing Flash and all sorts, and it's one of those things that many browsers are trying to lock down because there are security vulnerabilities with JavaScript, although less and less it is improving, particularly with HTML5. But JavaScript can slow down the performance of your website when there are CSS alternatives to that. So you're going to be seeing more developers using CSS techniques to animate and add motion to your website so it performs better than using JavaScript, which may slow down the performance of a website. So JavaScript still has its place, but we're going to be transitioning more towards CSS animation and motion. For our sixth trend, we're going to stay at this code level a little bit because we're talking about the efficiency of code and particularly removing the bloat. Bloated code is essentially when you have far too much code. It all has to download and render, which slows down the performance and the speed of a website. And developers are moving towards removing all of that. This goes back maybe 5-10 years ago when broadband was becoming very popular in 4G, and people were just adding more and more to their websites, bigger videos, bigger images, and bigger layouts, more resources and code and everything. They were just adding it to the website because internet connection speeds were able to cope with it. But we've realized over time that the slower a website becomes, even on those fast connections, the less people are interacting with the website. It's not helping with bounce rates. So we're going back towards really simplified websites that load instantaneously. Also looking at those people who are commuting with maybe poor quality phones that don't have the performance, they're going to want to have less code downloaded to their phones and be able to perform those websites with ease. So that means removing all of the bloat. And bloat particularly comes from website builders that are trying to cater for both desktop and mobile devices, and they just keep adding bloat. Every time you add a button and you style it slightly different to the other, more code is added. And we really need to modularize, so going back to modularization, modularize the content within our content management systems and reduce and minimize all of that bloat. Systems like AMP, which we touched on before, this will help you because it really emphasizes all those best practices that the developers should be using to make sure that there is no bloated code within your website. But if you're a marketing manager, it's important for those conversion rates that your website performs and loads instantaneously. So make sure you're cutting out the bloated code. Our next trend has probably been trending since time began and will most likely trend until time ends. It is cybersecurity, and it will always trend because it is so important, but it keeps changing. A few years back we were talking about SSL certificates, and by now you should have an SSL certificate installed on your website. Now this only encrypts the data between your server and the client, which is good when you're sending information across, particularly in forms. But it doesn't necessarily protect the server end or the client end. So that's what we're going to be looking at into 2020 is most likely the content management system or your server, and making sure that that is secure and up to date. Now most people are updating their server systems, they are updating the content management systems, but we're going to be looking at those plugins that you use and all sorts. It's all about security within the server and the APIs and communicating with each other. If we're using social media, for example, example, and we're taking information from there, sharing cookies and information between people and users, we need to make sure that that information is secure. We're probably going to see a less use of cookies in the future and more intelligent tracking platforms, and this will introduce more cybersecurity issues that we need to look at as well within development. So cybersecurity is going to trend in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, but we'll keep talking about it because as a company, it's important, very important, that you are staying up to date with the latest trends of cybersecurity. I hope you found that useful looking at website trends for 2020. We've got another 2 videos coming up in the next couple of weeks looking at other trends for 2020 related to content management or content for your website, and another one also looking at optimization of your website. So how does your website appear in Google and how can you rank higher? So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow all of our social media and watch our Facebook videos as well, so you can get notified when the latest video comes out on those topics. Hopefully you found this useful. If you've got any questions, please do get in touch. The email is theteam@unionbox.com. Thanks for watching and see you next time.